the There we go. And then the second goal is our whole child goal, where we talk about how we're supporting the students socially, emotionally, creating environments for positive behavior, and just taking care of a sense of belonging and well-being for our students. And then the third goal is about community engagement and how we engage our parents and larger community to support goals 1 and 2. So we're on this path of approval. We're going to be bringing this draft LCAP to the board later this week at the board meeting, and then we will ask for their approval at the following board meeting. So we're still in that draft stage, and we may make changes based on the feedback that we hear in this meeting or at the board meeting before the final approval is requested in mid-June. So hopefully this is just a refresher if you were attending any of the other meetings. I'm wondering, does anybody have any questions about the LCAP that you would like to ask for Superintendent Yao, so we can include your questions on our posting?
And good morning. Welcome, everyone. I apologize for being a few minutes late. Monday morning meetings.
Hi, Stacy. No questions out there this morning? Everybody's still getting settled? Well, we can keep going, and then if questions do come up, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat, or even just email it to me after the meeting, and we can include it in the response if we get it from you today. We did post all of this information a while back when we put the meeting notice out, and we did get some questions from people on that form, so that was helpful, and we're working on getting that ready for posting on the website as well. Okay, well, so moving on to the next segment of the meeting, annually, in addition to the LCAP funding that we've been talking about, we do create something called the Federal Addendum, which is a required document that outlines how we spend our federal funding. And these funding sources are called Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. And really our charge is to think about how we are meeting the needs with our students, meeting our students' needs with the LCAP, and then in addition, how the federal funds would support our strategic goals and in these different areas. So every year we create a plan that is also approved by the board around the time of the LCAP, and it outlines how much funding we're getting in each of the areas and what we are planning to use the funds for. And then that information is used by the fiscal department also to apply for the funds, which Tina will review in a little bit. So just kind of at a high level, these funding sources are renewed annually. And in the document, we outline all of the metrics that we're using, the amount of funding that's expected, and how we anticipate using the funds. So the first one is our Title I funds, and that source of funding, a lot of it is sent out to the school sites that have our highest needs students, our highest percentage of students who are low income. So the bulk of that funding goes out to Nimitz and DeVargas. And some is held back for private schools as well, because that's one of the requirements of the federal funds, that we meet with our local private schools, and we're kind of the pass-through for approval of their access to federal funds. So primarily that's what the Title I funding is used for. And then those sites outline, DeVargas and Nimitz, how they're going to use their Title I funds and their SIPSAs to support the students at their schools. And in Title II, that funding is for professional development. So as you look through the plan, that's the primary focus there, is how will we support our teachers and staff in getting what they need to move forward with our district priorities. Title III is to support English learners, and there are two buckets in Title III. One is just the regular English learner funding, and then there's also an immigrant source of funding for students who are new to the country. And these funds are used to support supplemental materials for helping the kids reach their proficiency in English. And then also in recent years, in response to feedback from teachers, we have added instructional assistants at the elementary schools to support students who are learning their English skills. So those instructional assistants work with our teachers and provide an extra helping hand as the kids are learning to master English. And then in Title IV, this one has a variety of qualifying areas. So it's the lowest amount. I always think of it as the lowest amount of funding of the title funding with the most amount of rules because you have to hit different areas of different buckets. And those buckets are well-rounded education, effective use of technology, and safe and healthy students. And so we use that funding to support our partnership with Project Cornerstone, which I know is very popular, and a lot of parents know about it too, since you help deliver those Project Cornerstone lessons a lot of times. And we also use it to fund our Overdrive library, which is the Sora e-library, digital books available and monitored and managed by our library media clerks at the sites. And then we use it for parent education around topics related to safety and well-being, like our puberty parent eds. This year coming up, based on parent feedback and staff feedback, we'll be doing some more parent ed around student well-being and safety. And so we use those funds for that purpose. Does anybody have a question or comment or anything they'd like to say about this plan? Okay, well, I think we're going to have Tina take us to the next section to explain how we receive this funding.
Thank you, Allison. Let me just share my screen. Give me one moment. All right, Miko, is the screen okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So just really quickly, I'm just going to run through the consolidated application. So as Allison mentioned, the consolidated application is how we actually apply for the funding with the federal government. So I'll just walk through the different steps and the purpose for us sharing this information with DELAC. So the consolidated application is used by the California Department of Education, and it is the source that they use to distribute the categorical funds, as Allison mentioned, our title funding. And it's also how we report how we're managing and how we're spending that money. So this is a part of the legal requirements and how they will also audit to make sure that we're following the proper guidelines with the funding sources that we're receiving. So the role of the DELAC is to have an opportunity to review the application and be able to provide feedback if you have any thoughts, comments, etc. So we'll be reviewing the pieces of the consolidated application so that way, if anyone here has any feedback, advice, etc., we want to make sure that we're taking that into consideration with the application. So as Allison mentioned, there's kind of three different parts to this district plan. They all work together in connection. The LCAP, our federal addendum, and then the consolidated application. So our title funding this year for 24-25, the upcoming school year, these are the estimated revenue amounts that we are currently applying for. We are applying for, as Allison mentioned, Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. We are not applying for the Title III immigrant student funding this year because we do have some leftover remaining funds that we're still working on spending out at this time. So we are not currently applying for that particular pot of funding, but we are applying for all of the rest. And Allison did a great job of overviewing kind of each of the titles, their purpose, and what types of activities are done under each one of those funding sources. Basically, the timeline's pretty simple. It's 2 times a year. We're in the spring part right now, and that's when we actually fill out the application. We provide certifications. We do the private school consultation that Allison was referring to make sure that we're working with our local private schools. And then we also share expenditure budgets and do reporting. And then in the winter, we do another update, and that's when we review all those reservations and allocations to the schools and report back on private school participation, and also provide more expenditure reporting. So the consolidated application goes 2 times a year. You'll see it on the board agenda this upcoming board meeting on Wednesday evening for review, and then it'll be on approval at the following meeting. So if you'd like to see the actual application itself, it is in board docs. The last piece is just federal program monitoring. The California Department of Education does monitor all of us for compliance to make sure that we are meeting all the requirements that come along with this funding. And so the way that they do that is through ongoing federal program monitoring. And so you'll hear about us talk about if we do receive any monitoring, it's not necessarily because anything was done wrong. It's on a rotation, and so they periodically will look at everybody's information. So you'll hear about us going through federal program monitoring on an ongoing basis. That's it for me, unless anybody has any questions. I'll stop sharing now. Did I already stop sharing?
No, you're still on.
I do not see any questions in the chat. If you have a question, you could put it in the chat, or you could raise your hand, or you could just go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like and talk.
Yes. And if anybody else from our team wants to add anything, please feel free to do that.
I think it's just the appreciation of everyone for being part of this throughout the year, and your input is so important, and appreciate being flexible. Last week was a little bit crazy with people out and just the end of the year. So appreciate the shift to this morning's meeting.
Absolutely. So looking ahead to next year, we have this meeting date tentatively set for next year. And I was thinking about having a little bit of a later start. I know mornings are busy getting the kids off to school. We tried a few things this year. We tried some in-person meetings, thinking maybe that would be, maybe we'd have, a chance to connect, but we really didn't have very good attendance. I think it's just, things have shifted a little bit, and people seem to appreciate the virtual meetings and the flexibility. And so I was thinking for next year to keep them virtual and push it a little bit later in the morning, hoping that that would help everybody kind of get settled in through the morning before the meeting starts. So does anyone have any feedback on that? Or if you want to give this some thought, you could also send me a note about preferred times or other ideas for how we set up the meetings next year. I really appreciate everybody's partnership this year. We've had some, great opportunities for conversation, and I know it's a big time commitment, but this is such an important role, because this is how we are, connected to our school sites. Of course, we're meeting with our principals all the time, but you as parent leaders provide another really important avenue for us to, hear what's working, hear your feedback, hear questions. You give us a lot of things to think about as we're setting up the district priorities and the goals and the metrics and the actions for the next year. And I really just value your partnership. So thank you so much. And we made it to June. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this meeting. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.